Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Ainsworth here, and we are at Great Oak High School in Algebra 1, and we are going to go over how to solve multi-step equations here with variables on one side, on both sides, with a distributive property, a little bit of everything here. Okay, so we're in 2024-25 here at Great Oak High School. Let's get started. Okay. And again, this is a video, right? And I always say this in the beginning because people don't know how to use technology properly usually. But you want to pause and play, and more importantly, go at your own pace. Because typically when people go over a lesson, they go too fast. And a lot of people just take notes and they don't understand a damn thing. And that's not good, guys. Okay, so you pause, play, oh, you know what, and rewind, okay, and listen to it again if you need to. All right, and go at your own pace. That is the important thing. Because if you copy and take notes and don't understand a thing, you're wasting your time. Okay, and you don't want to waste your time. You don't have the kind of time to waste. All right, so if you're watching this at home, maybe you're sick or something, or you're getting a second helping, and maybe you didn't understand everything that well in class because you're too afraid to ask questions and stop the instructor, which is happening too much, right? You need to vocalize and actually ask questions. Then use the video at home properly, get better at it, okay? I've had many students, especially during COVID, use my videos and be successful. So you can't tell me that you can't learn online, okay? And you can't learn from a well-made video, okay? So I'm going to go slow. I'm going to write down some directions. You do the same, and then practice. All right, here we go. First thing you want to do when we solve this equation, 13 equals 4 minus 2x minus 7x here, is you want to add like terms and simplify. So right here, I see a minus 7 minus 2x. And so what we want to do is add like terms. And notice that I'm putting that in red, right? Because that's going to be your first step in all of these. Every single one. And there's a bunch of them, right? And so you have to learn from the first example and apply it to the next example. So write down the right directions because the directions don't change. The equations do, the numbers do, the variables do, okay? But not the process, okay? So focus in on process, which not everybody does, okay? Like I said, a lot of people don't use videos correctly and they just copy and they don't learn a darn thing. And that's not good, okay? You want to focus on the process, apply it to everything because you know that the process doesn't change. Okay, so here we go. We're going to add like terms. And so 13 equals, and again, you read from left to right. So 13 equals 4, right? Now this minus 2x minus 7x, you're subtracting 2x's first, and you're subtracting 7, and so that means you're subtracting 9x's in all, okay? So you simplify it like terms. Nothing fancy there. If you're subtracting 2, x is first, and then you're subtracting 7 more, you're subtracting 9 in all. It can't be easier than that. Okay, step 2. All right. You're trying to solve for the unknown. And the unknown, the x here, the variable x here is on the right-hand side. Again, you have to know what right and left are. So right here, so we got left side versus right side. And, you know, in equation solving, you have to be balanced. Okay. And if you're trying to solve for the unknown, which happens to be x in this case, you have to add the opposite of your terms, okay? And so the opposite of 4, guess what? That's a negative 4. So I'm going to add the opposite here. Okay, I'm going to write down step 2, add the opposite. Now, some of you guys are going, hey, Ainsworth, you know, that looks like subtraction, okay? And it is, all right? Adding a negative 4 is the same thing as subtracting 4. So if you understand your basics in middle school, then you got it, okay? So the opposite of 4 is negative 4. Add negative 4 to both sides and combine like terms. Simplify. 13 plus a negative 4 or 13 minus 4 is 9, right? And we get 9 equals, okay, these cancel to 0 obviously. 4 and negative 4 is 0. And you don't get 9x, you get negative 9x. Okay? Now that you have the variable isolated, you got to go to step 3 here, all right? And you got to divide by the coefficient, all right? And you have to know what the word coefficient means, okay, which is the number in front of the variable. It's the number that is being multiplied by your variable, which happens to be negative 9 here. And again, the inverse of multiplying is called division, and that's why I said divide. So You divide by negative 9, and you get your final result. You get 9 divided by negative 9 is 1, or excuse me, negative 1, and that's equal to x, right? And there you go. It's a simple three-step process. And what you want to do is do the same thing over here on the right-hand side, okay, number 2. And I'm not going to do that. You guys are going to do that. So I'm only going to do some of the problems through this. You're taking these steps here, the process, and apply it to number 2. And then you could check my solutions online when you do that. So after this right here, you're going to check solutions, all right, in Canvas. That's where they're located. All right, but I'm not going to solve every single problem in here, okay? You got to do things on your own. You have to learn how to check your answers to see if you're on the right track, and you have to focus in on process and actually learn the process, right? Because the numbers change, but the process doesn't, as you're going to hear me say a lot, okay? And that's what you guys need to do is you need to go home and actually practice, and a lot of you guys aren't. That's why you're not improving. So what do you need to do? You need to change what you do at home. Actually go and use the technology properly, number 1. Check your work, well actually do the work, and then check the work and make sure you're good. Okay. Now I will do number 3 though. Okay, so let's go to number 3. So again, focusing on the process here, it says add like terms. Well, if you look at the sides here, okay, you got left side and right side, right? So left side and right side, right? You got to ask yourself, is there a way to add like terms? And on the left side, there is. These are like terms right here. Negative 7x plus 5x, they're both variable terms, and they're the like terms, okay? They're not unlike. It's not like one involves y and one involves x or anything like that. It's actually pretty straightforward. So since negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2, you combine like terms. And so you have negative 2x equals negative 15 plus 3x. Okay? Now here, so we added like terms, okay? Number 1, I'm not going to write the directions every single time. Just read up top in example 1. You add like terms, you simplify. And now you want the variables on one side. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to write that out, actually. I'm going to take that back. So add like terms. Number 2, here we have variables on both sides. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add the opposite, and we're going to get the variables to one side. So add the opposite, all right, to get variables on one side. Okay, on one side. On one, okay, side. Because you want to solve for x. You want x equals something, right? So that should make sense. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the variables on the left side because I've got a constant negative 15 on the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the opposite of negative 3x again. And notice that it keeps saying the same words. Add the opposite. Okay, if you want to cancel out a term that's being added, you add its opposite. Or you can think subtraction as well. So 3x minus 3x is 0. Negative 2x plus negative 3x is negative 5x. All right, a negative plus a negative is a bigger negative. All right, I didn't say multiplication there, so don't get confused. All right, and then over here, what do we have? Well, let me see. These guys, okay, they cancel to 0, right? Because opposites always add to 0. I should probably write that down. Opposites, okay, since I'm teaching a lesson here, always. So always add to 0. Notice I said add to 0 here, and that's what I'm talking about here. Okay, so you have to know some basics from, actually you probably learned that in 3rd or 4th grade. All right, so you get negative 15 here. And then of course you got negative 5 times x, and then there we go again, go back to the directions to the process, divide by the coefficient, step 3. So step 3, divide by coefficient. And notice I say coefficient and not negative 5 because the coefficient changes depending on what problem you're on, right? So if you actually understand the vocabulary and you understand what coefficient means, then, and you know that it's negative 5x, which means negative 5 times x, you always do the inverse in mathematics, okay? I don't care what level you're at, whether you're algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus, you always do the inverse, okay? And the inverse of multiplying is still called dividing. And so here we get x is equal to 3 because a negative divided by negative is a positive. And there we go. And that's exactly what you're going to do in number 4. All right, but the numbers change, but the process doesn't. So give number 4 a shot, and then like I said earlier here, check your solutions in Canvas. All right. Now number 5 is a little bit different, so let's talk about this one, and we're going to take a look at the steps here. So step number 1 in this case right here, when you see 3 times something, you want to do something called distribute. Okay, now distribute means multiply. So distribute means multiply through times, okay? All right, so we're going to do that. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Negative 3 times negative x is positive 3x because a negative times a negative is a positive. So first step on this one is distribute. And when you're taking notes here, you're pausing and playing, right? Because it's kind of hard to get all this at the same time you're writing. So if you need to pause it right now, do it. You're supposed to do this properly, right? Pause, play, rewind, and go at your own pace, as I'm repeating myself here, because it's so important to do this. And once you guys learn how to learn, then you're going to get better. Okay, trust me, you're going to get better. Okay, now let's look at the directions from before. It says add like terms. Okay, so there's nothing to add because negative 6x and 3x are unlike, negative 2x and 29 are unlike. So we skip step 1 up there on the previous problem. And we go to adding the opposite again, okay? And we add the opposite to get the variables on one side. So we learn from the previous one. So we're going to add the opposite of negative 2x, which is positive 2x. Okay? Now, believe it or not, you can add the opposite more than once, okay? Now notice that I got my variables on the left-hand side, which means you need to add the opposite of negative 6 to get the constants. This is called a constant. Again, a lot of vocabulary. You have to know what these things are called. We have 2 things here. We have variables involving x, and we have, or m, or whatever the variable may be, and we have a constant term, one that does not involve a variable, and that is like the value remains the same. That's why they call it a constant. So it's kind of nice to know what that word means. All right, and so I'm going to add the opposite of negative 6, which is a positive 6. So notice I did it here to cancel out the negative 6. And then I also add the opposite of negative 2x here, right? And I added it on the left-hand side because you got to be balanced. Okay, so that's 0 here. We get 5x is equal to, that's 0, 0 plus 35. Okay, 29 and 6 is 35. So you have to know how to add. And then last step, divide by the coefficient. So it's 5 times x equals 35. Let me just write it down. 5 times x equals 35. And notice that I didn't say 5x, I said 5 times x. And because of that, we're going to divide by 5, right? Because you want to isolate the variable. You weren't trying to solve for the unknown here, and you get 7. So there you go. Now we've done 3 different but related, very similar problems here when we're solving for unknowns. And the problems 2, 4, and 6 are all done the same way with the same process and the same steps. Okay? All you have to do is get good at it through what's called perfect practice. Okay? Which means you got to practice and check it. Because perfect practice doesn't make perfect, but perfect practice does. Okay. Here we go again. Distribute. Okay? Distribute. Distribute means multiply. So 7 times 3v is 21v minus 7 times a negative 2, which is a minus 14. And again, we're dealing with sides of the equation here. We got left side, and we got to work with the right side, right? And then 8 times 7v is 56v. And then 8 times 7 is, well, it's 56. And now I got v's on both sides, and so we got to look back earlier, and we add the opposite. Step 2 and number 3 here. It says add the opposite to get the variables to one side. And so again, we do the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to add the opposite of negative 56v, which is negative 56v. Now, since I chose to get the variables on the left-hand side, because these guys canceled out, and now I got v's on the left, I got to get my constants, okay, on the right, right? Constants. This is called a constant. Okay, it remains, the value of 56 is constant, it remains the same. It doesn't contain a variable. So now what I want to do is add the opposite of negative 14, which is a positive 14. All right, and notice that these 14, the opposites cancel out. Excuse me, the opposites. Here, they cancel out. All right, so what do we get? Well, 21 minus 56 is a negative 35, V. And again, you have to be able to, subtract in your head. 56 minus 21, right, is 35. You have to be able to subtract in your head. That's what I did. And a small minus big is negative, so you have to know it's negative. And then you get 56 and 14, which is 60 and 10, or 70. Okay. Then go back to the previous problems, right? Now we're dealing with negative 35 times V equals 70, right? So you divide by the coefficient again. Okay, so what's the coefficient? Well, guess what? It's negative 35. What do you get? You get V is equal to negative 2. Why? Because 70 divided by 5 is 2, but you got 70 divided by negative 35, and so it's negative 2. All right, 2 times 35 equals 70. You have to know that, okay? All right, and there you go. And that is the entire lesson right there. So once again, you have to practice. So you do 2, 4, 6, and 8. If you're at home, check solutions in Canvas, as I said up here at number 2. And then if you're with me in class, guess what? This is your homework, right? And it's the same. It is the same. All right. And then you check solutions in Canvas, because doing it is one thing. All right. Doing it correctly is another. And if you're not doing it right, you're developing bad habits. All right. So do yourself a favor. Check your answers. And if you're not doing it correctly, you better come in on the side. Come in before school, come in after school, come in during lunch. But if you just sit there and don't ask questions and you don't get involved and you don't get any help, you're not going to improve. And I know I'm kind of tough in this video, but it's it's a fact. Okay, so I've been doing this for 33 years and I've been working with kids for that long. And listen, if you don't put in the grit, the effort, and the persistence, and if you don't work hard and ask questions and actually get some help, you're not going to get better. So just do yourself a favor here. All right, listen to what I said, use the technology properly, work with me in class, and practice like crazy. You'll get better, trust me. All right, this is Ainsworth. You guys take care. I'll see you in class. Bye-bye.